Cody Hawk, and you're listening to the ECWF podcast.
Get the F out.
All right, welcome to episode number 19 of the ECWF podcast. We will not get the F out. We put the F back in. I'm your host, Sean Bicking, coming to you live from the Electric City, Scranton, Pennsylvania. And on this episode, I was joined by Cody Hawk. He's the guy that trained at Dean Ambrose and also lived with Dean Ambrose for 3 years, or Dean Ambrose lived with him. Also trained Sami Callihan. He was trained himself by Les Thatcher. He had a 10-year-long feud with Carl Anderson. He came back from a broken neck. We talk about him being a rosebud and all the stuff behind the scenes that goes into doing that. So if you're not sold yet on listening to this interview, I don't know what else to tell you. So listen in, enjoy. All right, back on the podcast here with Cody Hawk from, came up Dayton, Ohio on the phone there.
Yep, currently residing in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay, and you're originally from Ohio though, right?
Yep, born and raised in southwestern Ohio.
Nice. Okay, I want to start off talking a little bit about like your upbringing and growing up a wrestling fan, stuff like that, and then we could get into a little bit of your wrestling career, and then bring it up to current training and whatnot.
Okay.
That sound good? Okay. So all right, so growing up in Ohio, I'm trying to think. Oh, Ohio. I think Al Snow maybe. Ohio.
Yep, Al was around. He was about 3 hours north of me.
Your wrestling school is also there, right?
Correct.
And I believe Al Snow has his academy there too, right?
No, his place isn't in Ohio anymore. He's somewhere else now.
Oh, okay. All right. So I mean, who was some of your favorites growing up around that area?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I had the standard favorites that everybody had: the Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior. But as I got a little bit older and started to learn more about wrestling, then I kind of started getting more into some of the more technical style of wrestling. And, by the time I actually started my wrestling career, I was more of a fan of guys like Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit. But, when I was a kid, though, I watched NWA on Saturday mornings, and of course, fan of the Horsemen, and Tully Blanchard was like my favorite guy ever, and
nice.
So, yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned like Hogan and them, so what are we talking, like 80s, late 80s around there?
Oh yeah, I'm an old man. I'm in my 40s, so in the mid 80s, it was definitely Hulk Hogan and the WWF guys. Now,
did you go to the shows when you were younger?
Yeah, I mean, they would come to town. They'd come to the little arena in Dayton, and we'd go to those shows occasionally, and they were fun, and I enjoyed them, and like any kid would when you're a kid and you believe, and wrestling is great. So, and it wasn't until I got a little older that I might have become a little bit, discouraged going to some of those live events.
Right. Was there a certain guy that said wow, I want to do that?
No, there was never anything like that. I mean, I've always been a very active guy, and always clowning around, and I got a good sense of humor. I like to joke around and just act and be goofy, and just by chance, I knew somebody that was in the wrestling business already, and actually while watching wrestling one night, I just happened to say I'd always wanted to give that a try. I did it as a child, and wrestled around, tore T-shirts off, and act like I was big time when I was a kid. So I might want to try that, and then he'd let me know where a wrestling school was, and directed me there, and train maybe a year or so later.
Now, before that, like, were like you and your bunch of your buddies doing like backyard stuff, or?
No, we never did backyard
No.
stuff or anything like that. Just kids wrestling, like just trying to best each other in the house. Or I mean, I suppose you could call it backyard because it was in the backyard, but
Right,
it wasn't. We had no ring and we weren't jumping off of anything. We were just down in the mud trying to pin each other.
Nice. Now, when you were younger too, like you played other sports. Like I saw that you had like a football scholarship, right?
Yeah, I played football for my entire high school or my entire school career, and then I did get a little football scholarship, but I only played. I actually didn't play. I only used that for a couple of quarters, and then ended up transferring to a community college and getting out of the football altogether, which left the big athletic hole in my life, which was also something that wrestling helped fill.
Now, what happened that you just didn't go for the scholarship, or you lost it, or?
Well, when you're 6'2", 200-pound guy, and you leave high school, and now you're a college lineman, and the next smallest guy is 6'5", 275 pounds, and just getting beat up every single day, and just realizing that you're kind of too small for everything that's going on. So maybe rethink this and do something different.
So the next step was getting into wrestling then. After
Actually,
football?
I didn't get into wrestling right away. I went to community college, and I had a love for cars, actually, and I started building a race car, and I raced that for about 3 years, and then I got introduced to the wrestling and sold the race car, actually, to pay for wrestling school.
Oh, wow. So were you like doing that, like racing like professionally, like at tracks and stuff?
I was racing on tracks for sure, and yeah, it was for money and stuff. Would I call it professional? Not necessarily. It was a real certified NHRA track, and everybody had certified cars and everything. But it wasn't like the big time stuff you see on TV. These were aftermarket street cars that were exceptionally fast and really didn't belong on the road. But
okay. Getting into wrestling school, like where did you train at?
I trained in Cincinnati at the HWA under Les Thatcher.
Oh, okay. I had I don't know if you know Matthew Sigmund.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah, I had him on the podcast earlier, and he trained there also. He was talking about Les Thatcher and a couple of other different people that were there at that school at the time.
Yeah, I think he was there briefly. I just remember him in passing. I don't remember him really spending much time there with us, but I'm sure he's done a bunch of camps and stuff with Les, and he's been around the business for a long time, so I'm sure.
Yeah. So you trained with Les for over 2 years, right?
I trained with Les for about 28 months before I was allowed to have my first actual wrestling match.
And what's that like? Like, are you like chopping at the bit, or like you understood like I need this much time?
I was a referee during that whole time span, and sure, it bothered me because I wanted to be a wrestler, and I thought I was better than some of the guys that we were using on the wrestling shows. But in perspective, looking back now, I'm glad that I had that time to get to where I was at, because I made my pro debut, and within just a few months, I was getting to go do my first WWE shots. So I appreciated the fact that I had that much training and before I was let go into the wrestling world.
Yeah. Now, being a referee, did that like kind of help you understand like I don't know, like maybe like psychology more?
Yeah, of course. Being in the ring, just hearing how guys operate, how things work, just being comfortable in front of a crowd and in front of people. The referee is every bit as important as the wrestlers. The referee can make or break a match. So, it was definitely good preparation for making the switch over to being a wrestler.
Yeah. Now, when you were a ref, did you have to take any bumps or anything?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So after your first match, and you started, you mentioned WWE tryout.
Well, it was way different, man. We're talking going all the way back to like 1998, 97, 98.
Oh, okay, so it was
Way
hot.
different
Yeah.
than it is
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
Way different.
Yeah. Yeah.
When WWE would come to town, it was WWF actually. When they would come to town, their talent people would call the trusted trainers around the country and in the towns that they were at. So they would call Les and say, Les, we need 4 bodies tonight, and Les would send 4 guys over to the arena to do their thing.
Nice. Nice. So at that time, cause I read somewhere like you had a dark match with Val Venus. Was that around that time?
That was actually a couple years later in 2002.
Oh, okay.
Because HWA was at that time under a developmental contract. HWA and OVW were the 2 developmental companies in WWE, and we ended up with all the WCW guys at HWA, and was floating back and forth, doing stuff at OVW, doing stuff at HWA. And then, I got to go do that dark match. But Val had been stationed at HWA, and he'd already been there for several weeks, and, I already knew him. And so it was good and a lot of fun.
Okay. Now, before that too, like the tryout you had in 97, 98. Did anything ever like? Did you get close at that point, or was there any like?
Well, like I said, it is different than it is now, and they weren't necessarily tryouts. You went and you did your thing, and if they liked you, then you would get to do more of them. And I did a bunch of different things for WWE, and I was actually, before WCW went under, was doing the same thing with them, and that's who I was actually talking with, more at the time. Ended up with a contract with them that was good for about 30 days, and then they went under.
Oh man! So you got to be like, oh, I was that close, but.
Yep, and then I'd never been on. I mean, I'd been on TV, but I was never a featured wrestler on TV. I was just a job guy on TV. So getting thrown in the pool with 70 WCW guys that were currently on TV, just coming off TV. Chances of me sustaining a job were slim and none.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, even then, like being around all those different people though had to help, right?
Oh yeah, I mean it was great. It was a great learning experience, and it was a fun time. We had one time I'd say we had a roster that would rival any roster in the country. Like we had an amazing pool of talent. I mean, not only did we have pretty much everybody that was not immediately called up to WWF when they bought WCW. We had a ton of ECW guys there, and we had all their developmental guys that were there. A bunch of guys that were, on their way to the top. Guys like Umaga and Rosie and Lance Cade and guys like that. Charlie Haas.
Okay, well that's a lot. Yeah, definitely. And you, I was reading too. Like you did a lot of work with like the Samoans, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was, during that time, during 2001, 2002, my tag team that I was in feuded heavily with, at that time they were called the Island Boys, but they went on to become, Rosie and Jamal or Umaga or whatever you want to call them. So, definitely, and ended up becoming pretty good friends with Rosie, and, still to this day, keep in contact with him.
Nice. So you're in HWA at like 2002 around that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you ended up buying that from Les.
Yeah, once WWE pulled their contract out, and then all those high-paid guys were gone, HWA was pretty much left in shambles with about 7 or 8 guys left on their active roster. and wrestling wasn't like it is today. There wasn't a million wrestlers out there to choose from. And the ones that were out there, there were a lot of bad and not a lot of good. So it was a struggle to get the company up and running again. And me and a couple of the other guys, we were the ones really doing the work on all of that. And just in conversation, we got to talking to Les about buying him out. And in 2003, we did indeed buy him out, me and two other guys, and we bought HWA, and I owned it from 2003 to 2007.
Okay. And at that point, after you bought it off of Les, was he still around though?
Yeah, I mean, he came around, and he didn't live very far away from us, so he definitely popped in and out just to stay around the wrestling business. But effectively, we were kind of done doing business together.
Hmm. Okay, and was that kind of hard for you to not lose that relationship, but just kind of like?
No, I mean, I never lost that relationship at that time. Les, I was good friends with Les all the way up till probably 2007.
Okay. And back in 2003 too, did you break your neck?
I did.
Well, what happened?
Two guys, they were called, on the Indies, they were known as the Riggs brothers. They were two twins from Las Vegas, big guys, about 6'5", and they picked me up, each one on either side of me like a rock bottom, but they picked me up like a vertical suplex, and then swung me back down between, and should have landed me on my back, but spun me all the way around and dropped me straight on my head and my toes.
Oh, man.
I came down in a perfect U and broke my neck, cracked my C6 and T1 vertebrae, and blew the disc in between them.
Did you know, when it happened? It was broken?
I mean, I suspected it was broken. I mean, I couldn't move. I was laying there on the mat, and, my neck and shoulders was on fire, and, I could feel my fingers, coming back to life, and my hands coming back to life, and, it was a coin toss, either a really bad stinger or I've actually really broke my neck. And, I ended up getting up and doing whatever little bit of match I had left to do, and then walked to the back and then collapsed in the locker room, and then went and got my neck seen and found out what was wrong with it, and actually wrestled 2 more weeks with a broken neck so that we could do a TV angle and break my neck on TV. And then I took off and had the surgery and got it fixed. And
that's got to be scary though, collapsing in the back. You don't know how bad it is at that point.
Yeah, right.
And how long were you out after that?
Honestly, I was told that I would never wrestle again, and I'd be lucky if I could walk straight. And then I came back from that surgery after 4 months. Came back actually about 3 months earlier than I should have. And my first match back was against the guy that we did the TV angle with, him breaking my neck, and we did an hour and 5-minute match, my first match back.
Wow. And did you go over?
Yeah.
Of course. You have to, right? Okay. Wow, that's crazy, man. So when they tell you, though, you might not ever... Not even wrestle again, but walk right. Are you have the mentality I'm gonna prove you wrong, or you're shit?
Yeah, it's definitely a slap in the face for the first few minutes. Then I'm I'm already walking.
Yeah.
I think I'll be all right. I wrestled 4 more matches.
Yeah, that's
broken,
crazy.
So I think I'll figure it out. And I was running the training classes at HWA, and. I had a personal friend who was a chiropractor who worked directly with me in rehabbing my neck and back, and got me, back into shape pretty quickly. And I, continued to go to class and do what little light things I could, trying to make sure I could, just get myself built back up.
Right, but that thought never entered your head, I'm not done wrestling,
Oh no, that
yeah.
Definitely when they said you're not going to wrestle again, I was like, you want to bet?
Yeah. Now,
You'd be lucky if I'm not on the show next week.
now, if something like that were to happen today to you, like not age wise, but like just like with different technology and whatnot, now would you have maybe taken longer to come back or like take more time
Well,
off? I mean,
when that happened to me, I was strictly doing wrestling. So if I'm out, I have no money.
okay.
So that was that scenario. I mean, I had a house and I had a car, and I had bills I had to pay, and I was the owner of HWA, the head trainer at HWA. I was still wrestling for several other independent companies, around this half of the country, and so like that's just it. When all you do is wrestle and you don't have another job, you get hurt, you're screwed. So
Right.
it was get unhurt and get that money coming in as quickly as possible.
Yeah. That's crazy though. I mean, that's awesome that you made it back and everything from that. You talk a little bit about Carl Anderson. I know you guys had kind of a long history going back,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, I mean, he's a cool dude. He actually originally started out training with us at HWA, and then it didn't work out. He wasn't, he didn't compact good with Les there, and he ended up leaving us and going down the road to another school in Cincinnati, which was at that time our kind of rival promotion. And like I said, at that time there wasn't an independent company on every corner, so it was kind of a big deal. So he did his thing there, and I did my thing at HWA, and then we were friends though, and the guy that runs that company, Roger Ruffin, I was friends with him, and we just got to chatting about doing an amazing cross-promotional angle with them invading us, and actually trying to do a we're going to run you out of town angle right. And it was great. It was amazing for both companies. We drew some of our biggest houses. They drew some of their biggest houses, and it worked out beautifully. And Chad and I, or Carl, we ended up having a couple of amazing matches out of it. And then, fast forward 10 years, just a couple of months ago, we went back and we did it again, 10-year anniversary of the first match, and we, had another good one.
that's awesome. 'Cause he's from Cincinnati, right?
Originally, he's from North Carolina.
Oh, okay. I remember. Okay. But yeah, did you know like even like 10 years ago doing that? 'Cause like, did you ever see like he was gonna stick around here or like him going over to Japan like skyrocketed him?
You really never can tell with anybody what's going to happen with anybody's career. I mean, you can look at people and say that guy's good, that guy's got a future, but if that guy doesn't follow all the right channels to attain the future, he'll never have a future. So, when I looked at Chad, back then, he was just like any of the rest of the guys, just another wrestler. But, once he decided he was going to get out of Cincinnati and start traveling, and he started going over to the West Coast a lot and working on for a lot of the West Coast promotions, and his name started growing, then you start thinking, well, maybe this guy, might get somewhere. And then, sure, when he went to Japan, started becoming a full-time fixture in Japan, I just assumed that's probably where he'd finish out his career, and he'd just go down in history as, one of the great American Japanese superstars.
Yeah. And then obviously now all of the Bullet Club stuff and back in the WWE, so he's blowing up, and that's cool though. Like even like he comes back 10 years later and kind of finishes what he started. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was exactly how we played that angle too.
Cool. Okay. Another thing I want to talk about. You guys do, or you did. I don't know if you guys still do it, but a Brian Pillman Memorial.
Yeah, I mean, that was Les's thing back at HWA. Les was friends with Pillman before he passed, and he was friends with the Pillman family. And he did 4 of them, 4 memorial shows for the family after Brian passed. And then I actually became really good friends with one of the daughters. Her name was Lexi, and I ended up doing a 10-year anniversary show back in 2008, 10-year Pillman anniversary show with her and Pillman's ex-wife, so, and his younger kids, which were teenagers by that point. So, yeah, I mean, those were pretty amazing, awesome shows.
Yeah, yeah. I was looking at some of the pictures. Like, you guys had everybody there, like a who's who from like ECW guys,
Right.
like everybody. That was cool.
The very first Pillman show was the first show that had WWE, ECW, and WCW guys all working the same card together.
Wow. Yeah. And what year was that?
98.
98. Wow. Yeah. So that was like right in the middle of the whole rivalry and whatnot. Do they still do that today, or?
No.
Brian, okay. Is that something that stopped with Les?
Well, no, I mean, like I said, the one that I did was with one of the daughters, Lexi, and
okay.
Since then she's passed and she's not around anymore, and you know, the wife, Melanie, she's just you know, kind of followed a bad road in life and don't necessarily want to contribute to that.
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. Okay. Another thing I wanted to touch on a little bit. Working overseas, you've done a couple different countries and even Africa.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like?
That was actually very far back, like beginning of my career. It was crazy. I was scared to death, nervous. I'd never really been out of the country before, and you know, it was just a week-long mission with a Christian wrestling company, and wrestled a few times, and you know, it was really cool, but it was really scary, and not necessarily something I think I would you know, jump on to go do again. Not where we were anyway.
Right. I wouldn't think you think of Africa. You don't really think of wrestling necessarily.
Well, I mean, you know, Africa's got, you know, some pretty big modern cities in it and stuff. So, you know, there is some of that stuff in Africa. I mean, you don't necessarily think of that when you think of Africa. You think of, you know, lions and giraffes and desert and.
Yeah. Okay. What other countries have you been over?
I've been to Canada. I've been to Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay. Nice. Who did you work for? The Colognes in Puerto Rico?
No, I worked for Bushwhacker Luke.
Oh, nice. What was that like?
It was fun. I mean,
Yeah.
it was real fun. So, you know, just another place to learn a different style of wrestling and, you know, try to learn how to get over in front of a different style of crowd.
Right. Okay. So you mentioned like you'd done some WWE stuff earlier on, and then even WCW stuff. Is what like what's the biggest difference between like not even like locker rooms, but just like companies? What was like the biggest difference?
Well, back then when I was doing things for WCW in 98, 99, you know, that was like really the blow up of the Monday Night Wars and stuff, and WWE had a very colorful product. When you flipped on the TV and you looked at the WWE arena, like the ring was bright, the ropes were bright, the crowd was bright, and then you flipped over to Nitro and the ring was black and everything was dark and everything was blacked out, and it was very much the same behind the curtain. Like the locker room was just very dark and unfriendly at WCW, and you know, everybody is walking on eggshells. And then you know, 2 weeks later, you find yourself in the WWE locker room. Everybody's upbeat and happy and doing their thing, and you know, and it was drastically different. And now, though, you know, like I've did some WWE things over the last couple of years, and now it's a completely 100% different atmosphere than anything that I'd ever been a part of before. Now it's 100% all business. It's not even hardly like a wrestling locker room anymore, as much as it is like just a corporate machine.
Right. So I mean, like doing like extra work for WWE like over the past couple of years, and then even back then, like not tryout matches, but just doing like different work from them there. Like, did anybody ever like treat you any different? Like, not lesser. I don't want to say that, but like.
I mean, I was one of those guys that made friends with guys and, tried to get myself over. And when I did get the chance to work with people, I tried to be as good as I could be and as light as I could be and take care of people as much as I could. So I had a pretty good reputation with a lot of the boys. I didn't know everybody, but I did know a lot of guys. And, I wouldn't go as far as to say I had a bunch of best friends or anything like that, but definitely people who acknowledged me, shook my hand, or, stopped and chat with me for a few minutes in the hallway or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And somewhere along the line, too, there was some ROH work?
Just one. I just did one match for ROH.
Nigel?
Yep. Nigel defended the HWA title against me on one of their shows.
Oh, wow. So, that's a big deal, like, to have that on TV.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun. It was here in Ohio, and we got a standing ovation when it was done. It was pretty awesome. It was probably the first standing ovation I've ever gotten, and, it was super cool.
Now, you and Nigel, like, are friends because, like, you guys hang out. Like, you went out after that, right? I think I saw.
Well, Nigel trained at HWA too, and he was there 90% of the time that I was there. So yeah, we were super good buddies. We went on the road a lot together. I'm not sure if it's the same, but at one point I had wrestled him more than any other person in my career because there for about a year straight, him and I just went on the road 5, 6, 7 days a week and wrestled each other at any promotion that we could get booked at. And, we traveled all around the country together and just wrestled each other everywhere.
Right. I saw you were doing. I listened to a previous interview you were doing, and you mentioned being related to Harley Race, but you didn't want that to be known so much because, like, has that?
I honestly, when I started wrestling, I didn't know. I brought Harley in as a guest trainer at HWA, and we had him in to do like a training camp, and then he was just going to be a special guest on the show that night. And I have some family, and they were like, we had heard, these are some older people in my family, great aunts and uncles and stuff, and they said, we had heard through time that we might be related to Harley. And I was like, well, that's very weird, I'm pretty sure that's not his real last name. But they came to the show that night, and one of my great uncle and Harley started chatting and talking, and then they figured out a connection of family members, and then they literally sat there the entire show and mapped out a family tree, and then found out, Harley's mom and my great grandmother are sisters.
Oh wow. I mean, has that ever came up though? Like you said, you didn't know in the beginning, but later on.
Yeah, I mean, once that connection was made, Harley and I became friends, and I went out and worked for him out there for WLW a few times, and I've had him around for another camp. So I don't really keep up with him too much anymore. He's gotten up there in years, and but he's still doing his thing. So.
Yeah, but that'd be cool though, because you said like growing up, like you were like a NWA fan and like Four Horsemen and whatnot, and like that's got to be like, oh wow, I'm actually, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, definitely nothing I ever thought about when I was little, but it was definitely a cool fact to find out later on in life.
Right.
By that point, I was like, I've made it this far without ever, knowing that or trying to use that. There's no point in trying to use that now. So.
Yeah. Okay. I want to. HWA. You said from 02, 03 to 07, right? You owned it. And what happened that you left there?
Well, I mean, we had a good thing going. We had an amazing roster of guys. We had a TV show that was on the America One network that put us on in 140 plus cities, coast to coast. And we were doing good things, but we were in a super expensive building. We had super high overhead, and and some months we could swing it, and some months we couldn't. And just over time, my personal finances continued to fall, and at some point, the other owners, were no longer a part of the picture, and it was just me left holding all the bills, and they just kept mounting up, and tried as much as I could to keep stuff going, but I just had to be honest with myself and honest with the boys. Like, if I keep doing this, I'm actually going to bankrupt myself, and that's not really what I want to do in life. So, it's time to let this go and move on.
Yeah. So did you end up selling it?
I just closed it down, and actually one of the other owners stepped in and bought it out, bought the rest of it out, the rights, and then they ran a few more shows over the next couple of years, and then it changed ownership a few more times, and and it's still out there today. I don't think anybody's currently running shows with it, but I definitely know it's been bought and sold, and it's sitting out on the East Coast now, somewhere in somebody's garage, and someday it might see it surface again.
Was there ever any point, like when you were looking to sell it or shut it down, that Les stepped back in at all and tried to?
No, in all honesty, Les was part of the main reason that we couldn't afford to keep it open, because we were paying less for the company, and we had come to the end of our term with him, and we owed him a giant balloon payment, which we were never going to be able to make, and we just fell victim to a crappy contract, and just being young and naive, and thinking that people would be straight up, and so essentially we spent $42,000 over 4 years and ended up with nothing.
Wow. So I mean, not that there's like hard feelings towards him, but I mean, you were kind of trying to pay off his debt.
There were definitely hard feelings towards him.
I didn't want to say that, but
I was paying him, I was paying him $500 a month, and then he upped my payment to $1,000 a month, and that's ultimately what started bankrupting us. We couldn't hack that other $500 a month.
Oh, wow.
And I begged and pleaded with him to not do that to us, and I was informed that it was just business.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. It's just business.
That's shitty. Yeah. Now you said like the other two guys that had initially bought it with you, they kind of backed out. You said.
I think one guy seen the writing on the wall early on, and he bolted, and then the other guy, his wife started just not digging it anymore, and they started going through some hard times, and she relocated to a different state, and he hung out here for a minute, but then he bailed to go, try to save his marriage, and that left him 2 states away, and and he actually is the one that ended up, coming back and taking what was left of it when I was done with it.
Now, were they wrestlers too, or just like friends of yours?
No, the one guy was in the business as just a manager, referee type guy. And then the other guy was actually a cameraman. He started off as a cameraman for us, but he worked at a local TV station as a TV producer. So, he was with us for a few years, and he just kind of rose through the ranks of, learning how to run a TV show.
Okay. I was reading also that you made the PWI 500. Is that a big deal to you? Like, over the years making it?
Not really.
Really?
I mean, sure, the first time you're in it, you're like, oh, cool, I'm in PWI, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But when you know that thing is, 98% of work, it's not really that big of an accomplishment, I had one of the writers of that a few years ago, actually personally send me an email or something and said that they had heard that I was still out there and around and wanted to put me in it again, and so they got my info and stuff, and that was after I hadn't even been in it for several years.
Yeah, you're like, sure, okay, if you want to.
If you don't send your stuff into them, you're not going to get in it unless you're like a super indie name.
Right. I mean, a couple of people I had on the podcast before, I asked them the same question, and they said like you said, the first time it's cool and everything, and they might keep that copy of the magazine because it's the first time they're in it, but after that it's just another thing, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. So HWA, when you bought that, and you were still wrestling and training guys at the same time, right?
Correct.
And so, I mean, are you still like active wrestling?
Yeah, I'm still wrestling. I actually just wrestled two shows this past weekend. I have one coming up this coming weekend. So yeah, I'm definitely still doing shows.
It's been what, like close to 20 years, right?
Yeah, 20 years exactly.
That's crazy, man. Like people don't last like months in the business, and you're going on 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, you just learn over time. You learn to adapt and change and wrestle smarter and know your limits. When you're first starting out in wrestling, you definitely don't know your limits, and you have no fear, and you'll do anything. And after injuries mount up, and you've just been around long enough, you said you just know your limitations, and you do what you can do good, and you do that, and the stuff that's not so good, you just abandon it and don't do it at all.
Sounds like a trainer right there. When
Yeah.
when did the training like start? When did you take that like on more?
Well, I go all the way back to I started training with Les in '96, and I didn't start wrestling until '98.
No. I mean like you as like a trainer.
Right, but I started my active wrestling in '98, and about '99 or 2000 ish was like. It wasn't that I set out to be a trainer. It was more like Les got a phone call. Cody, run class. Les left and I ran class. And then that went from being a every now and again thing to once a week thing to twice a week thing to Cody's pretty much running class all the time thing. Then when the contract came in, the WWE contract, Les went back to training full time, but he was only working with the contract guys, and we still had a non-contract guy practice, and we still had to try to keep our students coming in. So that's when I started really, really taking the training on, and then like by 2003 when I bought the company, I had already been training guys for 3 or 4 years, and I was like, well, this is I've got an indie company, I've got a TV show, I've been training guys, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah. So it's just something that kind of happened over time. It wasn't like, all right, I'm the guy now. Like I'm the trainer.
Right.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that I set out to do, but it's what I ended up doing.
Right. Now, I mean, would you have maybe done it a little differently? Because like that's a lot of responsibility, and like you said, like he might have left here and there, and then you were like, it's on me now, and then I still have to worry about like myself training and get ready for my matches.
Right, and there are definitely things that I look back on that I might have done a little differently. And as I started training, and after I bought HWA, it didn't really necessarily. It wasn't so much about me trying to get a job anymore with WWE or anything like that, because I had HWA and we were doing well, and that was kind of my thing at that point. And so any good opportunities that came along, anytime WWE needed some guys or anything like that, I didn't send myself, I sent my students. And looking back, there's some things, I wish I would have sent myself to some more things and took care of myself a little better. But out of that stuff, produced Dean Ambrose and produced Eli Drake and produced Sami Callihan, because those were some of the guys that I was given those opportunities to, that actually took advantage of them and made the most of them.
Definitely. Before we get to those guys, Matt Stryker was a trainer with HWA for a while too, wasn't he?
Right. When I started doing like the class here and there kind of thing, me and Matt Stryker and another guy named Ray Steele, we were kind of in the same boat. We were the 3 quote unquote veteran guys of the company at that point, and Les would put us in charge of stuff all the time, and Race was a big muscular guy, so he kind of worked guys, on strength and power stuff. And Stryker was a really technical, finessey kind of wrestler, and he worked with guys on that. And I worked with guys on, cardio and keeping your wind and psychology. And the three of us together, ran the training there for a few years. But over time, Race ended up leaving and disappearing, and Stryker concentrated more on his own wrestling career. And, it just sort of all ended up kind of falling in my lap as it went along.
Again. Okay, so you mentioned Eli Drake and some of the guys, Sammy Callahan, Dean Ambrose. And those are all guys you obviously still keep in touch with now, right?
Correct.
Okay, and for those that don't know, Eli Drake is in TNA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Sammy Callahan was in NXT as Solomon Crow for a little while, and I'm not even sure what happened there. Like, maybe he was unhappy, I think, or something. I don't remember.
Well, from his own mouth, he said that he was just not getting used very much, and he wanted to prove his worth and prove to them why they even hired him in the first place. So he asked for his release so he could go back out into the indie world and dominate the indie scene and show them, that they needed to use him.
Right. And that's something, like, that seems so crazy to me that, like, you make your name in HWA or anywhere, like, get big on indies and they bring you in based on that, and then it's like you just kind of sit on the sidelines. You know what I mean? Like, you just heard that with what's his name, Cody Rhodes. He was saying that, and a bunch of guys there, Sandow, like all of them, they'll just kind of hang around there, and then once they voice their opinion, and then they go out and they prove it, like Sammy did. Because right after he got released, I think he picked up like a couple different titles at different promotions, right?
Yeah, he's pretty much killing it right now everywhere, all over the indie scene.
Yeah, that's cool. And like obviously Dean Ambrose. I watched your guys. Well, I think it was John Moxley back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
When he started out with you guys. I watched your guys. The one match you had, it was like kind of all over the arena and whatnot.
Yeah, that was actually just a promo.
Yeah, but and back then he had like, I think, long hair and like earrings.
Yeah. He back then was trying to pattern himself after Brian Pillman, so that was the earring and the sunglasses, and the long hair was just, that was kind of the thing. Like, wrestlers that could grow long hair had long hair.
Yeah. So, I mean, how long was, like, Sammy and, like, Eli and Dean, how long were those guys with you?
Let's see, John or Dean, he started with us probably in, I want to say, 2004. He was like 17 years old. He started with us. He ended up moving into my house and being my roommate for about 3 years. Then he was with me all the way up until I shut the company down in 2007. Same with Sammy. He was with me all the way up until I shut the company down in 2007. Same with Eli. Eli started, I want to say in like 2001, late 2001, early 2002 with us. And then and Sammy probably started in 2004, 2005 maybe.
So, did you mentioned Dean, or I'm gonna call him Dean because I don't know him personally like that. But did Sammy live with you also?
No,
okay.
Just Dean.
Just Dean. What was that like for 3 years? You said.
I mean, it was cool. I mean, he was just a 19-year-old kid when he moved in with me, or 18-year-old kid, fresh out of high school. So. And at that point in time, I want to say I was probably in my just my early 30s. So, and I had been wrestling, for 10, 12 years at that point. So, I mean, it was cool, like it was still the day and age of VHS tapes, and we watched a lot of wrestling together. And I'd get him booked, try to get him booked on any indie shows that I was booked on, and we worked a lot together. And I don't know, we had real good chemistry together, so it made for some really good feuds and matches on the HWA shows.
Yeah, definitely. Now, after the HWA with Dean, is that when he went to CZW?
I think dabbled in that a little bit, but after HWA, he just piddled around on the indie scene. I think for maybe a year or so, till like 2008 or so, and then I think he went overseas. He went to Germany and England and did some stuff, and then when he came back from there, I think that's when he kind of hooked up with CZW and started taking off there.
Yeah, and I mean that stuff in CZW was just crazy. That like I know you guys even had a couple like not to that level of matches like crazy stuff like that level, but that stuff was just crazy. I don't know if you.
Right, I'm not letting anybody cut my head with a jigsaw.
Yeah, but you've been known to bleed quite a bit, right?
I used to bleed all the time. I bled on a lot of the HWA shows. Blood wasn't frowned upon like it is now, and there's just we've learned a lot more about blood now. And Nigel was one of my closest, dearest friends, and he ended up getting sick, catching a blood-borne disease. And so he went on sort of a mission to try to educate people about blood, and I decided at that point that I was done bleeding on shows, and if I was ever going to bleed again on a show, it would be a big deal. It would be, both wrestlers are going to go and get full physicals and blood work done, and we're going to make that visible to the fans, and make an actual big deal about it. These guys are going to bleed tonight, kind of thing, not just we're bleeding just to bleed.
Right. Now, like when you were doing like those kind of matches, though, were like you were afraid like you might get kind of pigeonholed into like being that hardcore type
No,
of.
not at all, because I knew how to wrestle. I did a lot of the stuff at HWA because I owned the company and I was cheap labor.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, so like obviously you said like keep in touch with all those guys, and like with Dean being where he is now, I noticed you've been popping up around, like you said, doing WWE stuff the past couple years. I think the last thing I saw you in was right before you fought Lesnar, maybe in like a bar scene. Do you remember that?
Correct.
So how does that like come about? Is it just him saying, "Hey, I got this thing, and come on down," or does somebody from like them, like WWE, call you?
A couple years ago, I took I have a significant other, and I took her son to a house show, and I called Dean while I was there and asked him if after the show was over we could meet up somewhere so the kid could get some pictures with him and stuff. He's 11, so that would have totally like made his day. And Dean said, heck with that. I'm gonna send a security guard up to you right now and bring you to the back. So, security came and got me and the kid, and we went to the back, and we, hooked up with Dean back there, and we chatted for a little bit, and there was several people around that I knew, and, I just hadn't seen in 10 years, and shook a few hands, and that was when Adam Rose was doing the Rosebud thing pretty well, and that night, indie wrestler Madman Pondo happened to be a Rosebud. And he was walking by me, and I was standing in front of Joey Mercury, and I was like, holy crap, Pondo is a Rosebud? I want to be a Rosebud. And, Mercury said, he was like, really? Would you don't think that's beneath you or anything? And I was like, hell no, it's a payday. It's WWE. Sure, I'll do it. I spent the next day texting back and forth with him, and then, long story short, I ended up doing 14 dates with him as various different roles, lots of Rosebud gigs, a Sting gig, some just, other fun things. So then this past time, he was just coming to town to SmackDown or whatever it was in Cincinnati, and I had chatted with him earlier in the day about going to the show, and we were talking on the phone about whether I was going to try to get some tickets or not, and when I hung up, and 10 minutes later he texted me and he was like, "Hey, can you get some of your students and come down to the Cincinnati, and the main guy there that books people will be getting a hold of you here shortly." And 10 minutes later, John Cone, the main guy, called me up and got some of my students booked, and 6 of us went down there and did that little gig in the bar.
Now, when like you guys like you're filming that and stuff, like how hard is it to not like kind of like bro it up, because I'm sure you guys have done that so many times like in real life.
Right. I mean, that bar that we were at, that was an actual bar that we all used to hang out in on a regular basis. We knew the bartender, like we knew some of the regulars that were sitting there, and they haven't seen John since he became a big star. So it was pretty cool, and we shot that take I don't know, probably 3 or 4 times, and it was fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably natural because
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned being a rosebud. How many different like costumes or whatnot did you wear? Like who decides that stuff?
Well, you decide that stuff. Honestly, they just got a big rolling tub of gimmicks in it, and you dig through it and pick what you want. And the first time that I did it, I found this orange wig and some doctor scrubs, and I thought,
I do remember that.
this is a cool look. And then every time that I was a rosebud after that, I snatched up that same specific gimmick, and I was always that guy.
Now, I mean, does it go in like do certain guys go in there like with the goal of like to be ridiculous as possible?
Well, I mean, I'm sure, like, I was there under, I wasn't, like, trying to get a job, so to speak, so I wasn't, I'm in my 40s, and being an active wrestler for WWE is long behind me. So, I knew that going in, so I was just there to have a good time and have fun. Some of the other guys that were there, definitely were, trying to get jobs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So for me, it was easy to go out there and just be a clown and do whatever, because, like I said, I wasn't worried about repercussions of making somebody mad, because I wasn't trying to get a job.
Right, and I don't know if a lot of people might know that, but like a lot of those guys were all indie wrestlers. Like you mentioned, Pondo, right?
Right. Almost all of the
Rosebuds
were wrestlers.
Even I think Braun Strowman was at one point, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that's cool, man. Being a rosebud. You mentioned too, doing something. You dressed up as Sting, right?
Yeah, they when they were doing the Sting vignettes, I want to say a year ago in March, headed towards Mania. When they were doing the deal where there'd be 3 or 4 Stings in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was one of those guys.
You were the one in the ring?
Nope,
okay.
I can't say that I was the one in the ring.
Oh, okay.
But I was definitely there.
All right. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, I want to ask you about your tattoos.
What about them?
What,
Which ones?
The ones on your arms. They're like Chinese lettering?
Uh-huh.
What does it mean?
They mean family, strength, passion, love, and health.
Okay, that's cool. And any reason like they got it in Japanese, or what is it? Is it Chinese, Japanese? I don't want to say it wrong.
It's Chinese. It's Chinese, and mainly because it was something for me, and not something that I necessarily wanted anybody else out there knowing.
Okay.
Well, it was just kind of a thing for me. I knew what it said on my arms.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Tons of people ask me what it means, and I usually point in one direction and say bathroom that way. And they're like, no, it really doesn't mean that, does it? And I'm like, if I wanted you to know what it meant, I'd have got it in English.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, I saw that and I wondered what it meant. That's cool though. I like that. You used the term before. I heard it's called indie hell.
Yeah.
Can you just describe like what that means?
Indie hell, when you show up to a show and clearly the promoter has not done his job. He might lie and say that he's done his job, but you know good and well that he didn't do his job. There's 26 people in the crowd, the same 26 people that come to every show they do, and everybody is disgruntled, and three-quarters of the people on the roster don't really know how to wrestle. They're just there because it's something fun to do on a Saturday night or whatnot. To me, that's not, it's not competitive. Nobody's trying to go anywhere. Nobody's trying to do anything. And that's just not what I want to do. Like, if you're going to do this, I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are, what size you are, or what look you got. If you're going to do it, you should do it 100% to the best of your ability. And that goes from the owner to the promoter, to the announcer, to the boys on the show. And I don't really care to work for people that don't want to, at least compete on some sort of level.
Right. So that's where the term comes from.
Yeah, so that's indie hell.
Okay. A Rockstar Pro?
No comment.
Okay. I'll let that one go. Winding down here, we're over an hour, and I want to thank you for being on this long and this late.
I appreciate it, man.
This late at night. Real quick, any short term or long term goals?
Well, I know I'm actually sitting in my vape shop right now. I've opened a vape shop in the last couple of years, and that's kind of my full-time gig right now, and that's what I'm doing. And you can find that online, mycustomvapes.com. Then as far as wrestling goes, I have a wrestling school in Cincinnati, in a suburb of Cincinnati in Hamilton. I'm actually midway through a class right now. I run a 5-month session at a time, 100-hour class every 5 months, and I only take in 8 new people at a time. So it's very intimate, and we get to spend a lot of time together. And then the guys that have completed the class, they're permitted to come back and keep training with us as well. So I'm actually in my 3rd session right now, and have another one planning to start in September. So I'm slowly amassing a little crew of guys that are specifically trained by me and haven't had to be out and be in indie hell yet. I'm working for a promotion down in Hamilton called CWAI. It's a Christian wrestling-based company that doesn't preach. I'm not necessarily the most religious person in the world, but they have a really good thing down there, really positive people. And we've got a good little crew together now with my students and the owners of the company. And we're starting to do some good things down there. Like I said, we just had 2 shows this past weekend. We brought Simon Dean in for both of those shows. They both did well. It was a lot of fun. And, that's my focus now is, helping those guys out, running training camps whenever I can get them around the country. Have boots, will travel. Still doing indie shows, still working at least 4 or 5 shows a month. You can find me at codyhawk.net or on any of the social medias. I'm there somewhere floating around on all of them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and last question, and if you don't want to answer, you don't have to, but any crazy or weird Dean Ambrose stories or Sammy Callahan stories you could share, or anybody like that you trained with?
Well, I mean, I can give you one. I can probably give you one from each. When Dean moved in with me, he was a very fresh, young, out of high school babyface, and I took him. I don't know if it was his first strip club, but it was a strip club that we frequented quite a bit, and I knew the people that worked there, and we may or may not have gotten him some alcoholic beverages that night. And he may have just been chugging wine coolers, but when we got done, we left, and we went to a Kroger grocery store to get some food, and there was it was in the spring, so they had just dropped off like the big pallet out in the parking lot full of mulch, and he was a little drunk, and he was running into this thing, giving it shoulder tackles, trying to take it over, and then we realized that sitting up on the sidewalk were all the overnight employees who were all outside smoking, and one of them yelled at him, like, "You knock that thing over, you're going to pick every single one of them back up." And I had to grab him by the arm and say, "Come on, let's go," and get him out of there. And then, a Sammy Callahan story, like I had a party one night at my house. We used to have parties after all the shows. I called it Club Cody, and Sammy was quite intoxicated. Had a real small little broom closet next to my refrigerator, and that's where my trash can was. And I opened that door up to throw something away, and there was Sammy standing in the closet, just drunk as all get out, with his pants down around his ankles. I think he was trying to pee in my trash can.
Nice.
So, there you go.
Awesome. That's cool, man. Again, Cody, I want to say thank you for being on, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate you reaching out.
All right, that was my conversation with Cody Hawk. I want to thank him once again for being on. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed that one. Make sure you guys go check him out. He's still doing it after 20 years. Look up his wrestling school if you guys want to learn the right way. Learn like Dean Ambrose, Sammy Callahan, guys like that. He's the guy to go to. So I get it here on my plugs. Facebook group page, Electric City Wrestling Fans. Please join, and if you have already joined, please add in as many people as possible. That's where I post these interviews, as well as iTunes. Electric City Wrestling Fans, please subscribe, like, rate, review. The more traffic that gets, the better it looks for me, and I'm trying to get these numbers up, so I really appreciate it if you guys can help me out in that area. So, Cody Hawk, once again, thank you. See you guys in the next one. Thanks.
I just wanna run, hide it away, run because they're chasing me down. I just wanna run.